Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, let me turn my speaker up a little bit. Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome, awesome. Man, forgive me. I got my insurance shirt on today.
Got that business Tony on.
All right. I do the Zooms. So had my insurance shirt on, and I said I'm gonna do me a little fast today too. So had
Yeah,
to try to sleep in a little bit and get on up because got a long day today. A lot of calls today. So
yeah.
yeah, how everything going on your end?
Man, everything going good, bro. Busy. Just staying on top of everything. A long day ahead of me as well. I'm 3 hours behind you, but it's good, man. I'm loving the momentum as we talked, about in last episode. Just keeping it, because me, I like to like, all right, I want to go take a little hiatus. I like to like sprint and then breathe, But now I'm like, man, okay, it's a marathon, just jog. You don't gotta go so hard. Just like do enough to where you can consistently hold a steady pace. So that's what I'm working on, man.
Right, that's good. I was thinking about that today too. I was like, what's one thing that I can do every day that moves me in the right direction? Not too much, not nothing too crazy, but just something that will move me in the right direction. Whether that's sending an email blast, recording a video, something that just has, keep the engine going, but not, you know, overrunning it. And
Yeah.
so that's a challenge. And then too, seeing yesterday, man, I was just kind of going through my normal motions and saw that there was a shooting, and it was very sobering because I'm like, man, I've already added stuff to my story that has nothing to do with this shooting and don't want to appear insensitive. And then my wife made the point. She was like, it's crazy that two people was killed on a college campus when we getting ready to send our son to college. And and that right there, that hit different. Like, wow, you could have send your child to college, and then as a parent, this right here happens. And so I've been really thinking on that, like ever since I heard about it, and just trying to grasp the spiritual warfare angle of it.
Yeah.
Like what type of spiritual warfare is this? And what's the message for us in the body?
Yeah. It's Man, when I think about it, especially with the young men today, I think about the music that's being put out here. This killer culture. Everybody a killer, everybody got an op, and like that's all that's being pumped out. And it's layers to it. And we've talked about the power of social media, over a couple episodes, but generationally, this seems like this generation here is like really attaching themselves to like that's a part of their identity. I think it used to be kind of like we understood that rappers and like this culture was just like playing a role, like you an artist, like it's kind of like you playing a character. But now it's gotten really real because now this generation coming up, they're seeing guys that are actually real killers that are also rappers, and then they're rapping about all these different things. And so to grow up in this time and in this generation, it's almost as though killing is like normalized, right? And I think it's really affecting the health of our young boys and women, like just the fear. I was talking with a young lady the other day, and she was just like referencing men and just kind of telling me about, I got to look this up, so I don't know if this is factual, but she was saying that the amount of women the amount of women that die at the hand of men versus like other things, like car accidents, and she was just making that point, just like, it's dangerous out here as a woman, and just like, I have this fear of men, and it's like the spirit has us warped because now women don't trust men, and men don't trust themselves, and then men aren't trusting men, and so we're in this like divided state within ourselves. We're not connected with our spirit, we're not connected with God, so we're just ruled and influenced by anything that comes in between our ears or our eye gates or what we eat, right? That influences so much more than the Holy Spirit, right? Activating that. And so we're just susceptible to whatever the world tells us. So if I'm listening to music and it tells me that I got ops and I'm this and I'm that, and then at the same time, maybe, as a young boy, you're being denied by women or just whatever the case may be, you're depressed, you're anxious, you're going through it. And this got you in this induced state that where you're almost numb and you're just being controlled, and you pop off and do something and not even be aware of like what it is that you did. It's kind of like you were in this trance. And just when I observe and I look at, not all, but when I just see some young brothers today and women, I just see that they're just lost more in this matrix of society and don't know themselves. And then when they get hit with reality in the real world, they immediately go to one extreme or the other. It's always got to be life or death, whether it's self-inflicted as well. So yeah, man, it's interesting times, but man, my heart goes out to the young brothers, man. I just feel like they have no guidance. They don't have any leaders, like real men to look up to that are moving with character and integrity. They're listening to people that just talking about, they're speaking their truth of like street life, right? But that ain't everybody, life. And then you got kids that grow up in the suburbs that attach themselves to this spirit and mentality and start moving in that same manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was seeing with the little that I saw, this kid, he's a Caucasian kid, and his stepmom is a deputy in Tallahassee.
Yeah,
And like he had access to guns. And then there was his biological mom has been estranged from him. And she made a Facebook post that was deleted later saying that, that family is very deranged and like crazy and got a lot going on. And of course, she disgruntled probably as well from the custody battle. She's been
yeah,
estranged from her son. And then the son goes and does this. And then the police didn't kill him, though. They shot him, but they didn't kill him. And just to think about that, like, man, we moving into a space to where, and then they said that some of the kids at the school are survivors of the Parkland shooting that in South Florida back at the
yeah,
high school or whichever it was,
yeah,
some time back. And I'm like, man, we really going into a space, and that made me want to highlight and ask you, like, the life that you've lived. None of us have like a perfect life. We all make bad choices, but you didn't make any choices to that level. And I'm sure there was days that you felt anger, days that you could have felt rage or felt overlooked or unseen or disrespected. What do you think it was that your mother, and the reason why I'm speaking on mother, because that's kind of like a through line, that not everybody has a father. So we had an advantage right there, both of us
yeah.
growing up with our fathers in the home. But what do you think it was that your mother did that gave you stability and confidence and emotional intelligence?
Yeah, great question. I think it was her feminine essence, man. Just her being a woman. My mom growing up, she could just sense when something was off with me. She would just be like, "Baby, what's going on? You want to talk?" Like, or just, "Hey, I'm just checking in on you." She'll come in my room, especially as I got older, or just like would just bring me a plate of food. "Hey, baby, I made you, some food." Just that comfort, just that softness, that we don't get from our fathers, right? Or we get in a different way, a smaller amount, and rightfully so. But yeah, for me, it was that just her love, and just even growing up as a kid, my mom would always just speak life into me because I went to a private school up until I was in like sixth grade. And oftentimes I was the only like black kid. There was a couple others, but we were spread out. And so just that identity as a young kid trying to find yourself, you don't really see people that look like you. And so just every day when my mom would take me to school and like pick me up, she would just say, "I just want you to know that you are such a beautiful and handsome chocolate boy." She would just speak life into me like all the time. And, I really appreciate that, like, especially as an adult looking back and I reflect on the level of emotional intelligence I have. That's my first connection to it is my mom, just her intuition, that gut instinct of like, let me see if he's okay. Let me ask him, what's going on. And like to this day, my mom would just check in like, "Hey, just checking in on you. How are things going? How are, you know, And I don't always open up and talk about those things, right? It's that part of me as a man that just sometimes is like, nah, I want to be a man, right? Like I want to like show mom, like, hey, you and dad did a good job, and I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I can handle this, you know. But just knowing that she's there, knowing that just that a mother knows, man. It's just like this special like sense that God has given them. They know when something's off. They know when you need a hug. They know when, you know, you just sometimes just need to hear their voice. Hey, baby, just calling on you. You know, I live far away from my family now, and you know, just my mama just send me a text or just call me and say something, or she'll send me a picture of a meal that she's made. And she's like, I sure, you know, wish you could be here. You know, just reminded me of that, of the home environment that she cultivated, but not just the physical element of it, but just spiritually and emotionally as well. As like, hey, this is a safe space always. You know, you can always come back here if you need it, knowing that, hey, I'm here for you if you need to talk. You don't have to always hold everything in. So I think that just like knowing that I have a mother that really loves me and cares for me, and also provides that space to for me to vent and to know that it's okay to be emotional, right? And a woman that is emotionally regulated, that my mom, yeah, growing up, just like human nature, I've had some moments where I've annoyed my mom or did something I got a spanking, but that wasn't normal. Like my mom didn't just retaliate just out of because she frustrated about something else in her life and taking it out on us. My mom is a very emotionally regulated woman, and she knows how to turn on her logical side and like, okay, this is a moment that I just need to listen and analyze. And then this is a moment where okay, where I need to feel and I need to express what I feel and what I sense and see. And so I think, man, that's when I think about my mother and just her strength, you know, of like being a career woman, but also like still in her feminine, and like her love for being a homemaker too, you know, to see her balance it all, that had a great effect on me, you know, of seeing like even the way I think about the way that I keep my apartment and like keeping it tidy and just cleaning. These are things that like I saw not just my mom, but my mom and dad work together to instill, and just creating a very balanced household. So I think it's just like not really struggling. Like we all go through some sort of like trauma or pain growing up, but just like not struggling with like mental duress of like I've never seen my mom and dad cuss at each other or yell at each other. Like I've seen them discuss things with a certain tone, but never fighting or just like being irate. Like I've never seen that. I've seen two emotionally regulated people, and that affects you. And so now as an adult, like I know how to, okay, yeah, this moment right here, I'm a little upset or bothered, but that don't mean I gotta pop off and slap somebody in the face, because my mother never did that to me. My father never did that to me. He talked to me. So when I had an emotional moment or I had mental duress, I was taught how to talk through it. Like, is everything okay? I'm like, what's going on? Or I've noticed this about you. You know, my dad being the thing that I love about my parents, but really my father, is his spiritual intelligence. My dad like would get a download from God and just like, hey, you know, the Lord told me to, you know, just to talk to you about this. What's going on, son? And it was just like just his spiritual discernment to be able to pick up that something is off in my spirit. Because before something ever shows up into the physical world, we're under a spiritual attack first. And so when I think about this young man at FSU, like you said, the household, like spiritually was a recovering there. Just because you have a physical presence of a mother or a father, just a mother, but spiritually is God with them. Who's controlling them, you know? And so, you know, just when I think about myself personally, bro, like that's one thing that I know that was cultivated in me at an early age, building my confidence, allowing me the space to be able to speak my truth when needed, but also understanding there's a time for respect. And so then I take these things out to the real world and into my adult life, and I give people that same measure of respect, of understanding, of like, this is a time just to listen. I don't need to respond to this person, because I can tell they're in emotional duress. And right now they're not being logical. So they're not going to hear anything that makes sense. They just need to be heard, you know? And so I think those are some things that have just like helped me. And just my parents got me involved in sports early, like understanding conflict, understanding pressure and pain, you know, understanding how to be independent and get certain things solved like on your own through critical thinking, you know? And for me personally, bro, I've never had like play fighting growing up with like, you know, homies in the neighborhood, but I've never been in like I'm disgruntled or somebody's upset at me and it leads to we got to throw hands or physical altercation, right? like growing up, my father like taught me certain things, right, to be able to protect and handle myself. But I was taught more this the spiritual intelligence and emotional intelligence and social intelligence to handle situations. So I don't have to even sink to that level or lower my frequency to the point of that. The only way to handle myself in a disagreement, or I'm upset, or I got something going on me, is to cause harm and inflict pain upon somebody else. That's like the lowest form of intelligence. You're still in a barbaric mindset, you know. And so anyway, those, not to go on a long tangent, but those are some things that I was personally taught that I think have helped me to be able to navigate the world. And yeah, have those moments where I'm upset. Growing up, I was taught gun safety, and I have um tools of sorts, but I was taught to respect those things, right? But before I was ever given that, I was given, again, spiritual guidance and mental guidance, right? But then also a logical perspective of when using certain things, because it could be anything, right? And not to say that guns are good or bad. It could be anything. When you're spiritually off and a spirit of anger and vengeance is on you, anything can be a weapon of destruction, And so I think that that's the foundation, is just spiritual intelligence and emotional regulation, but it's got to be seen within the home. If he's used to somebody that is always popping off at the mouth, always physical, always threatening, just that energy is we know it's neither created nor destroyed, it's transferred. So that's my thoughts on it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's deep. And one of the things that you said that I picked up as like a through line, common denominator with my mom was the affirmation and like speaking life. And she just would always tell me like, "Oh, baby, you so smart. Like you so smart. You so gifted. You write so well. You can do anything. Oh, you could do this for a living. You should write for a living." Like when I started
Mm,
writing poems and things, and I just never thought that I would be writing one day and earning a living from it. But her saying that, and so it gave me like a confidence and a self belief that I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it makes me think about like what type of deficiency does a young man have to come to a place of rage where he causes harm to somebody else? And that's something that really, because I'm like you said, energy doesn't die, it transfers. And so every step that a man takes, and when I say man, meaning boy or man, a male, it takes energy. And so if someone is going to punch a hole in the wall, that was several moments of energy being directed to get to that wall. And then from the point of the thought of punching the wall to rearing your hand back and then letting it go and then it going through the wall, all of that is billions of synapses in the brain. And we just not thinking about the regulation
yeah.
of the male mind and what that takes. And even from little boys throwing temper tantrums, and our sons never had terrible tools, just because my wife and I, we worked in the group home, so we learned behavioral science, and we learn the tactics of ignore, redirect, reinforce, or stop, redirect, reinforce. And so we only had one episode from Tony, our oldest, of in the terrible twos, where he like fell out on the floor in the grocery store, and my wife just stepped over him and kept walking, and he realized he didn't get any attention. He jumped up off the floor and ran and caught up with her, and he never did it again. And
Mm,
so, whereas a lot of people always, even write books about the terrible twos, and everybody is like scared and waiting on it. But we learn how to use, I would say, confidence and also consequences, correction, consistency to help them become emotionally intelligent, to where emotionally regulated, as we talk about. And that's something that I think has to be more, that we got to talk about it more, because we have this thing called mama boys, and you had a mom in the home, I had a mom in the home, but neither one of us are mama's boys. And one of the gripes I hear from a lot of women is like men like worshiping their mom and putting their mom before their wife and putting their mom before everything. And I think that also is a form of not being emotionally regulated and not understanding our place in the world as a man,
Yeah.
and how we evolve and grow as men. And so this right here is something that I've been thinking about since that news yesterday, of different resources and things we got to start doing, you know, man to man in our conversations, and then also parent to child, because as the Bible talks about, how men will become lovers of selves, and how, when you think about it, a man who is not regulated, a man who is not spiritually grounded, like you were speaking on, that's a dangerous thing. Like how many million of teenage boys like that?
Yeah.
And so it's like, how many, if we have a million males that get turned loose without emotional regulation, that's genocide. And
Yeah.
typically we see things in the media. The media like to do things in threes a
Yeah.
lot of times. So I'm wondering if today we're gonna hear about another shooting at another place, and then the next day or next week we hear about another shooting, and then the next week, where it could be happening every day, but it's like the media pick it up at the same, like they show it at the same time when it happens, and we don't always hear national news. And
Yeah.
so that's something, even with these conversations that we having, that I'm thinking about, tools and resources that we could provide to our supporters and audience on how we can better regulate male emotions, and
Yeah.
how women can play a part in that, and then how the men who support us here could play a part in that, in their own emotional regulation, but then also checking on their brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing for me, bro, that I've been trying to focus on more, especially with my community and purpose lab and my audience, is talk about the male perspective and talk about what we need as men. Because when I think about that young man, and I'm just giving perspective, I'm not saying that I'm right. But when I think about his household, one, he's separated from his biological mother, so there's a disconnect there emotionally, right? But then his stepmother is a deputy, and his father's in the household too, I'm imagining. So though she's a woman, she's working a very masculine and demanding job that keeps her constantly in a fight or flight mode, right? So when she comes home, she's bringing that energy home, but then the father is also, I'm assuming, masculine. And so he's in this hyper masculine state all the time, which is important to understand that side of you. But when you already have an emotional disconnect from not being connected to your biological parent, that affects you, right? But then to be in a household where you got this energy and guns are easily accessible, it's constantly hard around you, and you don't get that healthy balance of the masculine and the feminine. I think that's where destruction, comes into play on both sides, right? When you were talking about how women complain about mama's boys, but if they didn't grow up in in a household where a father is there, yeah, they lean more into their emotions, and they have learned to develop their feelings more than their God-given logic, and like being solution oriented, because they've never seen that. And so I think that's the thing that we both got to understand as men and women today, especially in the minority community and as people of color, is the households that we come from. Is like understanding that we complain a lot about, women are so masculine and men are, not feminine enough or not, emotionally nourishing. But it's just like you got to be able to like understand where people are coming from and ask those questions. And I don't think a lot of times people really want to dive that deep and understand that everything is energy, that God created man and woman and the feminine and the masculine, and the two are to come together to be a whole, right? To be a representation of what the body of Christ, of what God is, right? And I think like that's just the problem today. And then now on top of that, I see like so many young boys that maybe don't have a father figure, and this has always been the case, but like looking for that on the internet now, looking for that through social media. And so at an early age, they're being exposed to red pill content that's telling them that women are trash and women are this and women should, like, so they're not being taught how to lead women. They're taught to demean women, and women are less than them, right? But God has created us as men to be cultivators, to be leaders, to be seed planters. But because the home has been so discombobulated, and that's the act of the adversary, even when I think about the story of Jesus and whenever he was born, and then the angel came to Joseph and told him to flee to go to Egypt because Herod was trying to kill Jesus, right? And then he went through the city and just started killing all boys at a certain age, right? Like from the time we enter into this world, we are a warrior, right? And we are seen as a threat by the world, by society, by the adversary, because our divine nature is to lead, right? But whenever there's a prince of the air and there's power and control, you want to control that. And so you want to kill off any seed, any powerful men at an early age, because you don't want that man to grow up and to overthrow the power structure that you've developed. So you kill that at an early age. You want to make him more effeminate. You want him to be more like a woman, and just kind of and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but a woman is an incubator, is more nourishing. She's meant to receive, right? But a man, like, is meant to give. He's meant to give his thought, to give his mind. Not that he always is to share, but a man should be able to formulate and have his own opinion about the world, to be able to deliver that to someone, right? But when that's been stripped of you, and you've only been in a very female dominant and environment, and all you know how to tap into is your feminine side, all you know how to do is receive. And so that's how you become a mama's boy, because you're used to mama doing everything for you, versus if there's a father there, your dad's going to say, no, 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 leave that boy alone, he'll figure it out. I remember at 4 years old, my dad took me to the pool and he gave me his logic. He said, hey, when you get in the water, this is how you swim. This is what you do, right? He taught me how to tap into that fight or flight mode. He picked me up and literally dropped me in the water, but he gave me instruction first of what to do, right? When we look at the story of Adam, Jesus dropped him in the garden, but he gave him instruction of what to do, right? That's the thing today. I think just what we're doing here as men coming together, talking, being able to be in our masculine and give logic and give direction, but also be emotionally intelligent enough to listen and understand each other and have perspectives and differing opinions, but still being able to agree and move forward in conversation. That's our role. And I think just like doing more of this, bro, just like exemplifying this in a healthy way, right? We're not perfect men by any means, right? But we're men that are striving to be pleasing in the sight of God. And as long as we're doing that, we're in submission and we're getting the instructions, we're getting the direction of where to lead ourselves. And then naturally, being leaders, we will lead those that follow us to the place that God directed us,
Hmm. That's powerful. That's powerful. And that made me think when you were saying that, it just kind of made me picture, even young men like high school age being in a circle talking about their feelings and topics. And that's one of the things they do at my son's school, like that in their Bible, like they have open discussion and they discuss and they go back and forth. And it might get, a little intense because the interpretation of the word, but just having that open forum to have that dialogue, helps them dig a little deeper and release and process their thoughts and feelings and emotions.
yeah,
And a lot of times we don't have that. So you're right, like us having these conversations is exactly that. And
yeah,
so that's something, and maybe we'll talk about it with chat gpt or something, and come up with some worksheets and things, like some downloads for people, for men to use, and then also for parents who are raising boys to use, whether it's conversation starters or just topics. And to every parent watching this who is raising a boy, and we understand it's equally as important for girls, but for the sake of focus and direction of the conversation, if you raising a boy, make sure that you start to engage and have conversation and have open dialogue. And that's one of the things too that I want to remind the moms of, is don't try to be too much of one thing. Like some moms don't have a father for their child in the home, for their son in the home, so they try to become too masculine and they forsake the feminine. And then some moms forget that maybe you shouldn't be taking your son to the nail salon and to the hair salon and having him doing nails and doing hair with you, and being too wrapped up in that.
Yeah.
And oh, mom, get this color, oh, mom, do your hair like this, and him learning how to do hair and him learning how to do nails, him learning how to pick out a woman's clothes. And I think some women make their son like their best friend instead of their son, and it make them like their girlfriend. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's like their son becomes their girlfriend, and it's almost like they talking to him like, "Hey, girl, what color nails you think I should get?" And then the boy gets so immersed in the way the female mind works and what colors and what this and what that, whereas he should have that knowledge, but should not become second nature to him. And
Yeah.
so being able to separate that and put him in an activity that engages his brain, whether that's the chess club or whether it's the basketball or football team,
Yeah.
putting him in something that speaks to his gifts, and then separating him from the worries of a woman, the world of a woman, but yet enlightening him so he understands the woman. And
Yeah.
it's a delicate balance. And that's one of the things that I notice and see, because that also leads to a boy not being able to be emotionally regulated. And I'm looking at it even just with the boys program and the young men that I'm mentoring, just seeing how that home environment affects them.
Yeah.
So something to think about, bro. And I'll leave the final words to you, and we'll pick up from there. And then any of y'all who watch this, any topics y'all want us to touch on, help us out in that area too. Because the more we able to pop on here, of course we'll run out of topics unless we touching on current news. But bro, you could take us home.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the most powerful thing that any person can do is really develop and cultivate their relationship with God. No matter your circumstances or home environment, lineage, what you come from, I think the Holy Spirit will give you the guidance of how to navigate your specific circumstances and situations. So if you're a single mother and you're raising a boy, allow the Holy Spirit to guide you and to convict you and say, hey, this is what to do. This is the destiny that I have for this little boy, because none of us are accidents. That God has always had a plan and purpose before our parents even knew us, you know? And so the situation that you're in, don't look at yourself as less than, but look at yourself as, okay, I'm God's child and he will navigate and get me through this. And your relationship with God, and as we talked about earlier, energy being transferred, your relationship with God, the closer that you get with the Holy Spirit, that will seep onto your household, that will seep onto your little boy, that will seep onto your little girl. And that God-like nature, that divinity will spread, and they will learn by your actions, by your spiritual and emotional regulation that is given to you divinely from God. And so I think that's my 2 cents in wrapping everything up today. Everything is spiritual before it happens in the physical. And until we get the spirit man right and get back to God, nothing else will matter, you know? So he that builds his house upon the rock or the sand, build your house upon the rock and God will do the rest. So that's my closing remarks. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we'll be back soon. Peace.